Hello and welcome to Holiday Homeopathy with me, Dorothy Watt. I thought that it would be a really good thing to do as it's summer and we're getting to go away places this year, whether you're staycationing or whether you're going abroad, to have a little think about how you can use some natural homeopathic remedies to support those everyday niggles which crop up on holiday. And there are certain things, aren't there, that crop up more on holiday than other times. So I thought it would be worth looking at things like jet lag, things like insect bites, sunburn, tummy bugs, and giving you just a few remedies, because too many remedies, it becomes just a guessing game that isn't the sort of thing that you want to be involved in when you're on holiday. And a few remedies gives you the chance to dip your toe in the water, have a go and see what a difference you can make to your day-to-day health without having to resort to loads and loads of synthetic stuff and chemicals. So I thought quite a nice place to start would be to share my screen. Right, here we go. I thought a nice place to start would be to have a look at how the conventional and homeopathic approaches compare, with particularly looking at these holiday things, because it is interesting to look at. So with jet lag, a conventional approach, well, there isn't really much that conventional medicine can offer. Being out in the sun as much as you can in natural daylight in the new hours that you're in, getting some exercise as soon as you get off the plane, and basically adopting your new hours as soon as you can is what the conventional approach would be. With some homeopathic remedies, what you're actually doing is supporting the body to adjust to the new time zone. You will, of course, be doing the use the sunshine, exercise, adopting the new hours, but your body has got that extra support that it wouldn't have otherwise. And it can make a huge difference in terms of the time it takes to adjust to being in a different time zone. Travel sickness, now that is a really, really unpleasant thing if anybody suffers from that. And again, you have quite a clear choice here. Travel sickness is when your inner ear is sending really unhelpful signals to your brain about movement and what's happening. And basically, if you're going to take something that stops you being travel sick, what you're doing is suppressing the signals that are going from your ear to the brain, telling it to be sick. What the homeopathic approach would be doing is helping your balance organs in your ear to adjust to the movement patterns. So a really, really different way of looking at things. Probably the thing that people dread more than anything else is getting a tummy bug on holiday. And you know, you're there for a short period of time, aren't you? You want to make the most of every single minute. And when you have a tummy bug, that just puts a complete spanner in the works. So the conventional approach then is to completely suppress the symptoms, to suppress the diarrhea, and basically bung you up so that you can control your bowels and you can go about doing what you want to do normally and not have to keep dashing to the loo. With a homeopathic approach, on the other hand, you're supporting your immune system to deal with the germs. So it can work either one of two ways. And I can't say which it would be. It depends on your immune system and it depends on the bug that you've got. So if you've had something that is just enough to make you a little bit queasy, the homeopathic approach would support your immune system to deal with that. No symptoms at all. If you've had something that really is quite virulent, the homeopathic approach might be to make you violently sick, but then you'd be violently sick and then you'd be fine. So it can work one of two ways. But either way, your body is dealing with it and the germ is sorted out and done. Whereas I'm just a little bit concerned that the germ ends up hanging around if you're suppressing your symptoms because it's not being dealt with. Insect bites, well, they're just a bit of an annoyance, aren't they? And it's when they come up in a red itchy bump that it makes them really, really annoying. And it's the body's histamine reaction. So the conventional approach would be either to take an antihistamine or to rub some cream on it to suppress that natural response. The homeopathic approach is to support the body to deal with the toxins so that, again, it's over and done with. Sunburn, well, we all try and avoid that. But it seems to be inevitable that sometimes we miss a bit with the cream, or we're just out a bit longer than we think, or whatever. We end up getting a bit of sunburn. The conventional approach can do really nothing else but cool it down. And you'll have to go on cooling it down for the length of time it takes for that to repair itself. The homeopathic approach will actively support the body to encourage recovery and repair so that the sunburn would actually last less long. So there's a coherent theme running through the homeopathic approach there and the conventional approach to some extent. The conventional approach, there's quite a lot of suppressing of what the body is trying to do in order to make you feel more comfortable. With the homeopathic approach, it's more embracing what's happening and supporting your body to deal with it as quickly and efficiently as it can. So just to summarize that, really, homeopathy helps our bodies recover from whatever's put it out of balance. And that's what we want when we're on holiday, isn't it? We're out of balance a little bit and we just want to be put in balance so that we can carry on enjoying ourselves. Now, the next thing that I need to flag up about homeopathy as an approach is that we as homeopaths, and anyone using a homeopathic remedy as a homeopath, homeopaths choose remedies based on symptoms, not on labels. So while I've said we're looking at jet lag, travel sickness, insect bites, tummy bugs, sunburn, what we're actually doing is I've got my fingers tightly crossed because I've used all of my 10 years experience and I've chosen what I think is the most likely remedy that you're going to come across for each of those conditions. And for it to work well, there needs to be a good match between the symptoms that you're experiencing or someone that you're with is experiencing and the symptoms that that particular remedy can help. So when I go through and explain the 4 different remedies, I'm going to switch now to doing a remedy approach. And I'm going to tell you about 4 different remedies. And you will see how they link up to the different holiday niggles. And there's a very good chance that you're going to get a very good match. If you get a bug, a bite, something that doesn't quite line up with that, you know, give the remedy a go anyway, because you're very likely to get some relief. You might not get a complete relief from it, but you know, you can always resort to the conventional thing if the remedy doesn't work, but there is a good chance that you are going to get relief from the remedy. So I have to take that gamble, because otherwise there's no way of going on holiday with just a small number of remedies. You'd be taking an arsenal of things with you. So I hope that seems okay as an approach to take. And we're going to go through the remedies one at a time. And the approach I'm taking is that I'm going to tell you the sort of symptoms that the remedy is good for treating. I'm going to tell you about what's likely to have caused those symptoms, and you know, one of the things that homeopaths do that conventional doctors don't is that they always ask, with any symptoms, they ask, what makes it feel better? What makes it feel worse? Which people who aren't used to seeing a homeopath find quite an unusual approach. But it's very useful in terms of tuning into your own body and actually being able to do a bit of self-help to go along with the remedy. But it helps tie down which is the right remedy for you to be using. So those are the 4 different aspects that we're going to be looking at for each different remedy. And then I'm going to just quickly outline a wider range of the sorts of things that each of those remedies can help with. So you might find that you end up being able to diagnose something completely different from the 4 things that we're talking about. One time that I did this talk before, someone noticed at the bottom for one of the remedies that it said hay fever, and they decided to give the remedy to themselves for their hay fever, and it worked fantastically well. And that wasn't what we were talking about at all. So it's going to really give you quite a lot of options going forward. So we're going to start with the arsenicum. So you get a bit of a clue from the picture as to what the arsenicum is there to help with. So arsenicum symptoms: nausea, vomiting and diarrhea. We're in the tummy bug picture here very much. Something that's quite characteristic for arsenicum is that the person can be very thirsty for warm drinks, and just taking sips of the drink can really help with the nausea and the vomiting, make it feel much calmer. A very interesting set of symptoms to do with the emotions is that somebody who needs arsenicum really fears being on their own. So they can become quite clingy and quite anxious, as well as really physically quite weak. And I think part of the anxiety and the fear of being left on their own is that suddenly all their energy's gone. And that's quite a scary place to be. Even when you've got the nausea and vomiting, it's the weakness that goes with it, which is almost disproportionate to the physical symptoms. And I think that really exacerbates this mental emotional picture. There can be violent stomach cramps as well. And even if the person is quite hot with a fever, they tend to feel very chilly inside. So it's the sort of thing that if you're feeling somebody and thinking, oh, you're really hot, let's uncover you, they're going to want a blanket wrapped around them. They'll feel much better somewhere warm. So what's going to have brought on these symptoms? Obviously, it's likely to be bad food. So that could be meat that's gone off. It could be water that's got bugs in it. It could be vegetables that have been washed in water that have got bugs in. It could be fruit, similarly, that's been washed in water like that, or the fruit and vegetables themselves could have gone off. Another cause could be fear of being poisoned. Because have you noticed that when you go on holiday, it's often those people who anticipate getting a tummy bug or being food poisoned by the street food who are the ones who end up with the tummy bug. So that fear of being poisoned can actually make your body a bit more sensitive to the bug. So if several people ate the same food, the one who had that state of mind would be the one who'd be more likely to come down with the symptoms. That's very interesting, isn't it? And certainly worth keeping in mind. As you might have worked out by someone who fears being alone, they're going to feel better when they've got company. Much better when they're warm, when they've got a warm drink, when they're wrapped up. They might want a hot flannel on their head or on their tummy or wherever makes them feel a bit more comfortable. Worse with sight or smell of food. Again, that's a really common thing, isn't it, with the tummy bug? Hardly surprising. And being cold. So you've got the opposite here. You feel better when you're warm, you feel worse when you're cold. So that's a cold drink, being outside, or being uncovered. So that was what I mentioned earlier about, you know, if you feel somebody's a bit hot, the instinct is to uncover them so that their fever doesn't get out of hand. But actually, if it's an arsenicum type of bug that they've got, they will be feeling much worse if you do that. Inside, they're feeling really chilly, and they really, really do like having that heat. So that is quite a characteristic picture of a tummy bug, isn't it? You can see that arsenicum would be a really good remedy to start taking for most cases of the tummy bug. It's a fantastically useful remedy though, and it's also really good for hay fever, for flu, for anxiety, and for heartburn. So if you are on holiday with someone who has got this fear of street food, this fear of the water, fear of everything, really disproportionate to where they are, then try some arsenicum. Don't wait for the tummy bug symptoms. Actually, just working at a mental emotional level, you could give them quite a lot of support with a bit of that. Heartburn or flu or hay fever, you need to think about, you're going to be looking for some sort of similarity with these symptoms. So you might find that somebody's wanting to feel warm, be wrapped up, and likes being with people, and has got this sort of niggling anxiety. So with hay fever, it would be somebody who always makes sure that they've got one set of their hay fever medication in the car, another set in their handbag, and another set somewhere else, just so that they always know that they're never going to be without it. It would be that sort of belt and braces type of approach that would be a clue. And flu, again, you could see whether it would be a good match because of the weakness, the anxiety, and maybe the warm drinks and wanting to be wrapped up. So do you see what I mean? It's the symptoms that you're actually going for, and you need a match with the symptoms. But arsenicum is the #1 remedy for tummy bugs. And if anybody gets a holiday tummy, arsenicum is the first thing to try. Right, let's move on to arnica. Now, arnica is the homeopathic remedy that just about everybody's heard of. And it's the #1 remedy for shock. It is really, really brilliant for shock and trauma. And it's also absolutely excellent for jet lag, for the physical and mental shock of changing a time zone. So let's have a look at the symptoms that go with the arnica picture for this. Being absent-minded, being forgetful, completely exhausted, oversensitive, and a bit nervous to go with the oversensitivity, so that you've got somebody who is maybe just not wanting too much contact with other people and just feeling a bit sort of fragile. And because of all that, really just wants to be left alone rather than interacting with others. Your sort of standard, let me just keep myself safe because I'm holding myself together while I don't quite feel combobulated, if that's the opposite of discombobulated. So the cause or onset here, obviously, is going to be the mental and physical shock of changing time zone. And people for whom arnica will help the jet lag are people who feel much better when they're lying down. So having a good rest to sleep it off. People who feel better out in the cool, fresh air. And they feel worse when they're working hard. So you imagine somebody who's traveling for business, who's finishes a meeting, gets on the plane, gets off, goes straight into a meeting, and just doesn't have a chance to stop. It's this overexertion type of picture, keeping on and on going. Drinking alcohol makes people feel worse with jet lag. And also after sleep. So you can go to sleep in one time zone and wake up in a different time zone, or the sleep pattern's often one of the last things to shift, isn't it? So you wake up and you're suddenly not in the time zone that your sleep was in, which can then throw you completely. So for that sort of shock, arnica is really useful. I suggest with the arnica, starting taking it before you get on the plane. So as soon as you arrive at the airport, that's probably quite a good time to take it, because there's hours at the airport, aren't there, when you've got nothing to do. Start taking your arnica, and I take it every couple of hours before you get on the flight. It'll help you deal with the airport apart from anything else, because they're quite stressful places to be, aren't they? Keep taking it every 2 hours when you're on your flight, and I would keep taking it every 2 hours when you get off the flight as well, until you feel that you're adjusted, until you feel you don't need it anymore. And it can make an absolutely huge difference to how comfortable you feel, how quickly you're able to adjust and to bounce back. So arnica is very often included in a combination of remedies for jet lag. If you get something from a homeopathic pharmacy, they will quite often include a number of remedies, but arnica is always one of them because it is just so useful for this sort of thing. Now you get an added bonus with your arnica because look what it's also useful for. The sorts of things that you might expect or might have expected if you've come across arnica before. Really useful for bruises, really useful for physical injuries, and really useful for shocks. So if you fall over on holiday, if you sprain an ankle, if you hit your head and get a bruise, if you see something traumatic happening, take some arnica, and that will really help. So that really is a multi-purpose remedy, and definitely worth having with you wherever you go on holiday. And let's move on now to cocculus, which is the remedy that we're looking at for travel sickness. But when you look at the symptoms that cocculus helps, you might be thinking, oh, well, when I have jet lag, I feel a bit like that. And cocculus is also a fantastic jet lag remedy where the symptoms match. So it might be that you'd want to alternate the two. And that would be a perfectly good thing to do. So for cocculus, we're thinking about dizziness, a lot of dizziness with nausea and probably vomiting. I remember the times that I have felt travel sick. You know it's going to come when this cold sweat breaks out. Cold sweat, the headache, you just feel dreadful. The whole of you, again, is quite thrown off balance. So being able to think straight is all a bit of an issue. And the whole of you really can get quite disorientated. So you can see how that does fit in with a jet lag picture, can't you? I remember when I got back from New Zealand, every time I took it, my foot landed on the ground, these waves of dizziness came up and overtook me. And I think cocculus, if I'd ever known of such a thing at the time, would have been a really helpful thing for me to take. So with regard to the travel sickness, and also with regard to the jet lag, the motion of boats, trains, cars is what's causing these symptoms to happen. And we often end up travelling at night, don't we? Or in the early hours, or we get up in the early hours to go, or we don't get up early, which means we arrive late, which means we then end up being sleep deprived one way or another. And that sleep deprivation can be one of the things that leads to the cocculus symptoms alongside the motion. Now, someone who needs cocculus for their travel sickness, they're not the sort of people who are the ones who are out on deck on a boat wanting to be watching the horizon all the time, they need a different remedy. The ones who need cocculus are the ones who feel better when they're inside in the warmth. They're the ones who lie down or sit down and actually just want to sleep. And conversely, they feel much worse watching the moving surroundings, staying awake, and experiencing the movement. So if I think about being on a cross-channel ferry or something, I know immediately the people who would benefit from cocculus, because they're the ones who find themselves a seat and they just put their head down and they just sleep and they just don't want to move because the motion sets everything off. And while some people actually, their stomachs are settled by eating or drinking, even when they are feeling sick, someone who needs cocculus, even the thought of having something to eat or drink is going to be enough to set them off. Now, what else useful things have we got that cocculus can support us with since we have it with us? So it is very useful for jet lag. And if you recognise any of those symptoms as being part of the sort of jet lag picture that you have, I'd alternate the two, arnica and cocculus. So you take one, and then 2 hours later you take the other one, and then 2 hours later you take the other one. And of course, it doesn't matter if you get it mixed up a bit. It's useful for vertigo because it's acting on the inner ear to help sort things out. It's also, in a wider context, it's useful for sleep deprivation, not just from travel, but also from carers. So people who have to stay awake to look after someone who's sick. And that can also be something that happens on holiday, can't it? You're with somebody who gets ill and you find yourself looking after them. And then as a result of that, you end up feeling a bit dizzy, a bit disorientated. Cocculus would be a really good remedy for that. General fatigue, it's good for, particularly with these sorts of symptoms, and labyrinthitis. So when you get that virus in your inner ear that sets your balance off, you know, you turn your head and the whole world spins to catch up. So everything about cocculus really has got this spinning. Handy little picture to cue you to what the remedies can help you with. Are we all right so far? So on to our last remedy, which is apis. And apis, for those of you who know a bit of Latin, is the Latin for bee. And apis is actually made from the sting of a bee. So I'm afraid I can't say that no bees were harmed in the formation of this remedy, but I think about one bee was harmed in order to make all of the apis that is needed in the world, because homeopathic remedies are so dilute. So there hasn't been a mass culling of bees in order to generate the apis. So also the clues in the picture. this remedy is very useful when it comes to insect bites. And it's the sort of insect bites that get red and hot and swollen. So that can be something from as tiny as those little midges that are everywhere in Scotland, to a mosquito, to a bee sting, to... It's actually very good for jellyfish stings. So lots and lots of different types of stings and bites, but the characteristic that's important is this red hot swelling. It can also be used for an allergic reaction where someone gets puffy burning eyes. So someone who's allergic to cats, for example, and might find themselves next to a cat, or next to, in a street restaurant where there are cats nearby, and suddenly find their eyes have puffed up. There's a stinging pain that tends to go along with it. So your sting would be red, hot, swollen and stinging. And your puffy burning eyes would be stinging. And along with that, there's itching. So you've got red, hot, swollen, puffy, stinging, itching. And there can be a degree of drowsiness that goes with it, particularly if it's in response to an allergic reaction. So, as I've mentioned, the causes are going to be bee stings, midge mosquito bites, jellyfish stings, or an allergic reaction to stings, to bites, to food. And one of the common things is that they feel better if you put something cold on it. So your puffy eyes, if you've got, a cold flannel, they feel much better. Or if you've got a bite that's driving you mad, just putting a cold, damp tissue on it or something makes it feel better. Feel better for moving about, because someone who needs ABIS can feel a bit restless and a bit anxious as well. And it sort of helps get rid of some of the tension. Bit bizarrely, feel better for sitting up straight. Now that's the sort of what we'd call a strange, rare and peculiar, that if you see it, you think, oh, I remember, that's ABIS. Don't ask me why. I really don't know why that is. And cool air, sort of the cold in general, is good for the hot, itchy, swollen things. Really prefer being out in the cold or having something cold on them. And conversely, they feel much worse with some heat. So that's either in hot weather or with a hot bath or hot food. Any of those are likely to increase the itching, increase the puffiness, increase the stinging, increase the sense of discomfort. And worse for touch. So it's not those bites that are going to be better when you scratch them, that you're going to make it much, much worse if you touch it or scratch it. And worse for lying down. Now it's interesting, isn't it? Bites and things often play up when you go to bed. you suddenly think, well, I've forgotten about that one. That hasn't itched all day. As soon as I went to bed, it started itching again. Now, 2 reasons why that might be. Firstly, you're lying down, but secondly, when you go to bed, you tend to put a cover on top of you, so you tend to be warmer. And I've used Apis for insect bites, and I just find it so useful. I remember having a bite on my arm a few years ago, and it was just one of those really just annoying things, and you just kept putting your arm there. Oh, it started itching again. Took some Apis, and the itch just went. It just went, to the extent that I completely forgot that that bite was there. And the itch didn't come back at all until the next day. And then, because I suddenly thought, oh, that itch has come back again. I thought that had finished. Took another Apis, and then it went, and then it was about 3 days before it suddenly, oh, that itch has come back again. Took another one. So it can be very, very effective with very few doses, and it's well worth giving it a go for insect bites that are red and hot and itchy and stingy. So Apis is also good for nettle rash, for anything that fits this red hot, puffy, itching, swollen picture. So it could be nettle rash, it could be heat rash. You know, the sort of thing you get sometimes if you have a sun cream that blocks your pores and you end up with that prickly heat. That's the sort of thing it would be good for as well, because it's swollen and it's red and it's itchy and it's a bit stingy. So any sort of swelling again that fits that picture, if this is the only kit that you've got with you and you get cystitis, I would give this a go. If you get cystitis, because think about the pain. It's often stingy, burning, makes you feel, you know, absolute rubbish. Often better for cold and worse for hot. So give it a go. And sunburn. Because again, you've got the redness, the heat. Think about when you get sunburn and how much worse it feels if you put something hot on it. And if you've got that sort of sunburn, then try some Apis. Conversely, I have to say, I will just throw this in as a quick bonus. If you have some sunburn that feels much better when you put something hot on it, and worse when you put something cold on, now that's bizarre, isn't it? But if that does happen, try the arsenicum. Because if you remember, the arsenicum was much better for heat and worse for cold. So if those are the only remedies that you've got, give it a go. If it fits, try it. So those are your 4 remedies. And I hope that they have sort of rung some bells with symptoms that you remember from the past, if you've suffered from these things, because each time we have insect bites, we tend to have very similar ones. We have a similar reaction to it because it's our body that's doing the reacting. Every time we have sunburn, we react in the same way. Jet lag, again, it's the same type of reaction. So if you can work out the right remedies for you, then have them with you. And if these have rung a bell from symptoms you've had in the past, it's very likely that they would work again for you. So we have a very, very quick quiz here. If you were travelling on a boat and you felt queasy, which of those 4 remedies would you go for?
You want us to answer?
You can do, or you can
Write them down.
write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cocculus would be a really good one to go for. You're on a boat, the movement of the boat is making you feel sick. What about if you're sitting out in the sun and you get burned?
Apis?
You could try some Apis, particularly if it's much better when you put something cool on it. Now, here's an interesting one. You're travelling on a boat and you start to feel queasy after you've eaten your lunch.
Is this when you might try arsenicum?
I think that would be a good one to try. Yeah. It could be that you've eaten something dodgy and arsenicum would be a really good one to go for. Or it could be that you were just on the edge of feeling travel sick and the thought and sight of food and the eating of food was enough to tip you over into travel sickness. But personally, I'd go for the arsenicum for that one. What about if you were relishing being in a nice cool evening and you got bitten?
Is that the Apis again?
Yeah, because Apis really enjoys the coolness and doesn't like being in the hot and is really good for insect bites. So you got a plane from the UK to the US, you had a good night's sleep, but when you woke up from breakfast, you felt dreadful.
Arnica?
I would definitely go for some arnica. Yeah. You've managed to get some sleep, but then you wake up and you're suddenly not in the right time zone, and arnica just will help your body be supported through that shock. Fantastic. So we have some short-term retention. Brilliant. Now, I thought it would be helpful to go through how to take homeopathic remedies for acute conditions, because there's a bit of a knack to it and it's very different from conventional medication, which will just say 1 every 4 hours or something like that. Because, as I've said all the way through, we're dealing with symptoms here, and it's the symptoms rather than the conditions that govern A, the choice of remedy, and B, when we take the remedy. Because homeopathy is the sort of medicine that you try to use as little as possible of. So you only take some when you need it. You only take it when you've got the symptoms that you're trying to treat. So that's for acute prescribing I'm talking about. So when your symptoms start, as soon as you can, after the symptoms start, you take the first dose. Now, this often won't be enough to sort the whole issue out. And you may find that you get only about 10 minutes relief, and then your symptoms come back. And at that point, it's really important not to think, well, that didn't work, I'm giving up. Because what you learn at that point is, I've had 10 minutes relief, that worked. But my body has used up the energy from that particular dose. Now I need another dose. So when the symptoms come back, that's when you take your second dose. And when you take the second dose, it tends to last a bit longer. So you may get half an hour of relief. And then the symptoms will come back again. And then, of course, you go, hallelujah, this is really helping. now I need to take the next dose to really knock this on its head. And often the third dose is what really knocks it on its head. And after the third dose, you'll get about an hour and a half with no symptoms. And then after that, it's just a case of keeping on top of it. And I would say about 3 times a day, while the symptoms keep popping up and your body's learning to deal with the symptoms in whatever way it's going to deal with it. But like I said with my insect bite, remember, when I took it down, my symptoms didn't come back till the next day. So I took my first dose, and it was probably 12 hours of relief before I needed my second dose. On the other hand, you might take one and you might only get a minute or two's relief. So you do have to really listen to your body quite carefully. And if you're aware at all that your symptoms have got better before they come back, so the chances are you've got the right remedy, you take a second dose and you'll get more relief the second time. And if you do it this way, this sort of staggered way, so that each time your symptoms come back, you take another dose, that is the fastest way of getting your symptoms under control. So I've given you that on the handout as well, because I thought that was quite helpful to have with you.
And can I ask, so one dose is one of the little capsules?
I would take one of the little pills, yes.
Yeah.
And it's important not to feel unsupported when you've got when you're using homeopathy for yourself and it's something that you might not feel very confident with doing. There are resources there to help. There's a homeopathic helpline which is staffed by homeopaths, which is available 365 days a year, 9 a.m. to midnight. It's a fantastic resource. Yes, you have to pay for the call, but they're always there to give support and to recommend a remedy. So it often doesn't take more than a minute if you know what you want to ask, and they've got their books and their experience to help and support you through it. So that's the number there, 09065 343 404. I had them on speed dial when my children were young. And I would just like to throw in, so this is all very well, so I could do this for myself, I can sort myself out. So why on earth, why would I need support from a professional homeopath? Well, and this is just, the examples I'm going to give are just in relation to the sort of holiday first aid things that we've been thinking about today. Because if you've got, for example, travel sickness, which doesn't respond to standard remedies, then if you go to a professional homeopath, you can get a bespoke prescription just for you, just to match your particular symptoms. If you have extreme reactions to insect bites, and you have had for several years, that's just what your body does, it's in overdrive, then going to see a professional homeopath would help get to the bottom of that issue. If you're always succumbing to tummy bugs, so every time you go out somewhere you go down with something, or you've got a toddler who's always getting whatever's going round, a professional homeopath would be able to give some support for the whole body to make that less likely to happen. If there's persistent fear of being poisoned or anxiety about health, that's the sort of thing that professional homeopathic treatment, again, can do a bespoke treatment to help support you mentally so that you don't need to have those fears and those anxieties. Regular long-haul plane travel, arnica and cocculus will get you a long way, but if you're traveling regularly, a more comprehensive package will give you an even better support. I have seen homeopathic jet lag remedies put a sparkle in someone's eyes who've just come back from a really, really long flight. It can work almost better than it should be able to. And again, that's a bespoke thing based on your particular needs. So that's what you're getting when you see a professional homeopath. But professional homeopaths are absolutely delighted, very by and large, that people are embracing homeopathy and doing what they can for themselves. So I hope that quick run through those 4 remedies, focusing really just on one aspect of each remedy so that you can just see how they would be able to help you during a holiday abroad. I hope that has given you a degree of confidence to have a go and make a difference to your holiday. And are there any more questions?
I've got one question. Thank you very much. It's going to make a huge difference because the 2 things that really affect me are travel sickness and feeling travel sick, especially on boats, and insect bites. Insect bites are really bad. So I just wanted to ask, when you take the remedy, do you take it so you keep it in your mouth, under your tongue or on your tongue? Or do you have a drink of water with it and swallow it down? What's the recommendation? Or does it not matter?
Excellent question. Yes, it really does matter.
Right.
Because we're really dealing with energy here, it's important that we get that energy into our bodies as soon as we can. And if we swig it down with a glass of water, then we're diluting it down and could lose it.
Right.
So I would suggest either putting it under your tongue and letting it dissolve slowly, or crunching it up in your teeth.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which can be just a bit quicker.
Okay. So either of those.
Either of those. Yeah. The conventional approach is to put it under your tongue. And some homeopaths will say avoid peppermint and avoid coffee when you're using your remedies. I'm less of a purist when it comes to that, but when it comes to storing them, I would try to store them away from your phone or away from your iPad or your laptop or whatever, because I think the amount of energy that comes off these electronic devices is huge.
Yeah. So that's helpful too. And you already said it. So you take the first one, and then it's about the return of the symptoms. So you're listening to your body. So my thing with insect bites is often I don't know I've been bitten until I get the itch. And then they get red and swell. So it's the itch that would be my signal, I guess.
Yeah. And the itch is the symptom that matches the remedy. So that's the exact time to start taking the apis.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, well, I really hope that the apis and the cocculus helps. So are you a travel sick person who stays inside?
That would be my other question. Now, this is where I don't know if I've learned something. So when you said if you're the person who goes outside and looks at the horizon, that is something that I've tried because people have told me about it. You know, that you watch a spot on the horizon. And I do find the fresh air helps as well.
The fresh air helps, right.
So is that a different remedy then?
That is a different remedy. That is tobacco.
Oh, right. It's not in my kit.
It isn't in your kit, but it can be.
Maybe I need that one as well, because then it would be trial and error, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what I've tried is those bands.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I've tried those. And I've tried travel sickness pills, but they make you feel a bit drowsy, don't they? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's a learned behavior or a natural behavior. So maybe I would need to try both of them, the cocculus and the tobacco.
The tobacco. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Oh, well
Yeah.
done. And because it's always the same, isn't it? We have one sort of travel sickness, and that's how we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
getting the right
other
remedy.
travel sickness I get, when I was little, I got it all the time. If I was sitting in the back seat of a car, I got motion sickness, whereas if I was sitting in the front seat, I didn't. Is that something to do with vision as well? I don't know.
I think that's to do with you can watch the horizon when you're in the front.
So maybe that's it. And because I'm an avid reader, and if I was ever on, there's this thing about I can read on a train, don't affect me. I can read on a train. Reading on a coach makes me feel sick.
Ah,
Yeah. I still have that a bit. So I can read on a plane. I don't know what it is. So planes and trains I'm okay with, but boats and coaches, I'm not.
interesting.
Isn't it? So
Yeah,
again, I think it's experimenting, isn't it?
it is, and see how you get on. But I think the horizon one is the fresh air one.
Right. Yeah.
So I think yeah, the tobacco would be a good one for you to try.
I need that as well.
You probably do.
I need both those. That would be brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And yes, have a go. And I hope that's inspired you to have a go with some self-help remedies and make your holiday less stressful.
Yeah, will do.
So I will hit the